Hi, I'm Glenn Dill and I'm a course creator. In this video, you're going to learn 5 valuable ways that you can increase your course sales even in this tough economy. You're going to do that by learning how to increase the value that you deliver to your customers. That value is going to be increased by applying the best practices of learning and development specialists that are applied worldwide. I want to help you design and teach the most valuable courses to your community. This video will inform you about the core competency that you may be missing to succeed. That is the core competency of instructional and experiential design. So at the end of this video, you will have a roadmap to take that knowledge and your skill you already possess and transform this into courses that effectively transform your customers and your students by delivering effective and enjoyable learning experiences by applying the best practices of instructional and experiential design. So strap yourself in, because I have 5 tips that will show you how. Tip number 1. The good news is that recent studies indicate that there is a building wave of demand for online course content. That's great news. So we know that we got to catch that wave of demand just at the right time. And if we do that, we can really help boost our business. Now, globally, the market for e-learning is increasing at 13% year over year. That's tremendous. And we can see an example of this kind of demand by some of the learning marketplace platforms that are out there, like Udemy, that has 52 million users. Wow. Skillshare is smaller, but it has 12 million users. Incredible. Now, the thing that's really exciting is YouTube has already entered into this market and will be expanding their course platform offerings so that their content providers have a platform that's better than all of the competition to showcase their courses. So that needs to be us. That's the wave that's really coming. So if YouTube is investing in offering courses produced by content creators like you and I, that's a sure sign that that wave is coming for some exciting opportunities for course content creators. Now, but we got to catch that wave, and we got to get ready and make sure that we have the competencies that we need to be the best of the best. Where is this increased demand coming from? And what are the key trends? Well, most economists agree that the U.S. and most advanced economies will experience a recession before the end of 2023. Now, this will likely result in some job losses, as has been seen in all of the previous recessions. Now, it's possible that won't happen because so far it hasn't. We've got a really strong job market, but that's what usually does happen. So if that happens, some demand will come from people sharpening their skills to become more competitive during the recession and to keep the jobs that they've worked so hard to get. Also, many people will want to learn new skills just for the fun of it and the entertainment, as started during the pandemic. Could be new cooking skills. I know some of you have those kind of classes that you offer. And how to do a project around the house, how to take care of that new baby, and many, many more. But some of this increased demand will come from the need for employees to reskill due to their current skills being displaced by the evolution of technology that's happening at an increasing rate, caused by technologies like artificial intelligence and others, and the impact of displacing millions of jobs with new jobs that require new skills that they don't currently have, and that trend is likely to happen through at least 2030, as was recently reported by the World Economic Forum. Now, the research that was completed at the Research Institute of America has also shown that e-learning is more effective for adults and often children when designed properly. It can result in 20 to 60% more retention rate of the information that's taught. That's huge. So the key to these types of results is that the course has to be designed properly, which is what we're going to talk about, and it has to be given by someone who knows how to deliver e-learning course content, which is what I'm going to prepare you for. So that's what this video will cover. So please watch it all the way till the end, because it's just packed full of really valuable, actionable items and tips that you need to know. All right, tip number 2. You need to understand how adults learn, right? So in most cases, it's going to be adults that we're teaching and targeting. So if your goal is to meet your customers' or students' needs so that they love your courses, join your community, and keep wanting to view your content, you've got to be able to deliver effective learning experiences for them. After all, what do they want? What's the value they're looking for? They want to learn something. There is a way and best practices on how to do that that's out there. So in other words, they have to actually enjoy and learn a new skill from you by experiencing going through your course. So how do adults learn? Well, the process of learning has 3 steps in our brains. First, the knowledge has to enter our short-term memory. Then it must be transferred to our long-term memory for storage and then later retrieval. And finally, we have to be able to recall the knowledge from our long-term memory and then utilize it correctly. There's an entire body of academic knowledge and methods that has been developed over decades to effectively accomplish this. It's used in our schools and colleges, and it's called instructional design. So that's what we're going to cover in this class. So here are some of the basic concepts to keep in mind when you design your courses. First of all, you need to create an environment that promotes learning. That means the distractions need to be minimized, it needs to allow for focus, and it needs to provoke active learning. Secondly, people can only retain a certain amount of information in their short-term memories. And if you're like me, my attention span's getting shorter with each year that goes by. The younger folks out there definitely have short, sometimes milliseconds or a few seconds attention span. So you should divide your content into chunks of information that would be covered in no more than 10 minutes, with about 2 minutes of time at the end of that to rest and to review before moving to the next topic. This facilitates the information moving to long-term memory from short-term memory. 3. Deliver your content for each learning style. Most students learn primarily from hearing, seeing, or doing. 4. You got to provide honest, open, and constructive feedback. That's so important, because if they get no feedback, they have no idea if they're getting it or not. Plus, there needs to be opportunities for you to coach them and to help encourage them along the way. Tip number 3, use a combination of the 3 styles of learning. Adults learn most effectively by following the 70-20-10 rule of learning. You want to spend about 10% of your time in formal instruction. Then you want to spend about 20% of your time providing that constructive feedback along with coaching and encouragement that we just talked about. And finally, 70% of the time of learning is accomplished through applying the knowledge that they've gained through experience. Now you might want to know, how are you supposed to provide that kind of learning experience and practice for active learning? Now I'm going to share specific ways at the end of this tutorial, so that's one of the reasons why you need to hang with me till the end. Okay, so tip number 4, you need to utilize instructional design best practices. Okay, one of the basic concepts in instructional design is called the ADDIE process. ADDIE is an acronym that stands for analyzing. That means analyzing what problem the training is being designed to solve. Now this is by far the most important step in the process. If you can answer this question, why are you training? What are you trying to accomplish? Then you don't need to continue designing the course until you figure this out. Once you have figured it out, then you're ready to use the instructional design best practices to design the course. And you want to utilize those best practices. Then you want to develop those very specific learning experiences by doing. Then you want to determine how you will deliver this content and implement it. And finally, it's always important to evaluate the effectiveness of your training. Did it deliver the learning outcomes that it was designed to produce? Now, another key concept in utilizing instructional design best practices is using Bloom's taxonomy, which we'll just call Bloom's tax for short. This gives you a hierarchy of learning outcomes. So think of this as an increasing level of learning from basic knowledge to more and more complex application of that knowledge. So as you see here, first comes knowledge. The result of that knowledge is being able to define what that knowledge is, describe the steps involved, the process involved. An example would be if you take ADDIE, what does ADDIE mean? Okay, that's knowledge. The second step, the next higher level of learning, is comprehension. That is, I've got the knowledge now, I need to explain and describe how it's used. So in that case, it could be, explain how adults learn. The next level higher is application. The result is being able to apply and demonstrate how you do something that you've learned. So an example of that would be, how do you apply ADDIE for your course? The next higher level is analysis. So that's taking that knowledge and being able to analyze and compare and really think about in more detail with data and information what you've learned. So an example of that would be, how does using ADDIE compare to not using ADDIE? That would be a form of analysis. Again, higher level application of the knowledge. Then comes synthesis, which the result of that is to be able to create from the knowledge that you have, create new things from the parts that you've already learned. Much higher level of thinking and knowledge. An example would be maybe applying ADDIE to e-learning as opposed to a classroom environment. Finally is evaluate. The result there is to be able to take all the information, analysis, synthesis, application, comprehension, and utilize it to judge, assess, appraise, score the effectiveness of, in this case, ADDIE. So an example of that would be, is using ADDIE more effective than not using ADDIE? All right, now tip number 5. Follow experiential learning design best practices. Experiential learning design is a complement to instructional design. And if you remember, instructional design takes us through a process where we focus primarily on designing the content so that knowledge can be gained by the learner. So that's that 10% of lecturing, and then it also includes the coaching part. That's 20%. But then there's the 70% of learning that happens through experience. And experiential learning design addresses that. That can also be very intentional in design. So what it focuses on is designing experiences that will reinforce the learning that's taking place. So I'm going to show you this model here, and we'll walk through it. We can't go into a lot of detail in this video, but we'll do that in other videos. It starts with a concrete experience. So you design a concrete experience where the learner can actually experience and do the task or the skill that you have trained them in. And once they do that, they actually experience it, then you want to have a period of reflective observation. That is, looking at that experience and seeing what did they learn from it, what went right, what went wrong, what did they not know well enough, what did they do automatically that they feel very confident in. So there's a period of reflection that goes on. Then you want to take them to more of a higher level of learning. Now this goes back to that hierarchy of learning that was covered when we talked about Bloom's taxonomy or tax of abstract conceptualization. You want them to take the experience, the concrete experience that they've learned and that they've reflected on, and take it to the next level, which is a level of abstraction, to get the deeper understanding of the concepts involved. And there's lots of different reasons to do that. The way I like to look at it is you want the learner to understand the concepts, because if they can conceptualize something, then they can identify that need to apply that skill or knowledge in different situations that come across. So again, that's a higher level of learning. And then you want to further reinforce the learning experience through active experimentation. Maybe put them in a situation you would have done in the first step of concrete experience, but instead give them some general experiences where they can play around with applying these knowledge and skills and see how they need to adapt them to the specific circumstances. But you see how that hierarchy can be very powerful. But you take them through a process of getting closer and closer and closer to the abstract, closer and closer and closer to conceptualization of how they would apply this in many different circumstances. It can be super powerful. Now, each one of these has a different learning style, and we just won't have time to go into that today, other than to just say that there are different learning styles that are best reinforced by these 4 different types of experiential designs. So again, this means you're very purposeful in both how you design and convey the content and how you design experiences that you can take the learners through to reinforce that 70%, which is so critical in actually moving from the initial information and knowledge in the short-term memory to experiences that make it part of your long-term memory. And now it can become habit. It becomes a learned skill that you can apply over and over and over and increase your proficiency or abilities to actually employ this skill over time. Now, we've all experienced that in our lives, right? So we know it works. It's neat to have a process to go through with learning, just like we do with everything else that we're doing to be successful in course creation and being a content creator on YouTube. Hope this has been valuable. We're going to summarize now on some really practical things that you can do that won't require you to start from scratch. Let's review, and we'll talk about how we can incorporate best practices by adding value and content and not starting all over. So that's a key thing I'm trying to accomplish here is I don't want any of you to have to redesign courses and start from scratch. I think, as you'll see, there's a lot of really practical ways and low-cost ways where you can add some things to allow you to incorporate both instructional design concepts and experiential design concepts into your existing classes. And then, of course, if you're starting from scratch, you'll want to keep those in mind as you design the course. So let's go through this. First of all, we talked about chunking content. One way you can do this is expand existing content by increasing the number of sessions or course modules. So that's just taking the existing content that you have and dividing it up into chapters or subchapters so that you can keep that 10-minute and then 2-minute review in mind. You can also add content reviews at the end of those sections to give you that 2-minute resting time. You can do that to existing content. The second thing is you want to reinforce knowledge. Some ways to do that without starting from scratch is to add some short tests. I do that on my site. A lot of the software that you can use will allow you to add in tests that give feedback pretty quickly on did they get the right answer or not. You can do it manually. Lots of different ways you can do it. But add some short tests at the end of those chapters. You could also add some exercises for them to do just to reinforce what they've learned. Another way is to provide active learning. Again, we don't want to start from scratch, so you can add a case study. Write up a case study that either you can cover during the time that you're going over the knowledge and laying out the content or the points, the chapters, or you can just add it at the end of a section or at the end of the course. You can also write up an independent case study that you give to the students once they've completed it that they can work with on their own. Now, in my case, I've got some spreadsheets and tools and things I've developed, and I give it to them. That way they can utilize those tools, and it provides some structure to reinforce what I'm trying to teach them. And then they do the case study, and then they take a quick test. I think it's 10 questions in most of my classes, and just to reinforce, did you understand what's going on? And finally, we want to provide feedback, right? So a great way to do this, and I love this, because if you add coaching, you accomplish 2 things. You'd not only provide that feedback, either to a whole group taking a class or to individuals. It can also be a great way, as we know, to add another product and service that you can either give as a free value-added service of coaching, or something, especially if you're spending a lot of time on an individual basis, where you can charge some reasonable fee for additional coaching. So I think you can see that in the short time that we've gone over these general principles, that if you apply those, just like college professors do, just like teachers do and have been doing for years, using these best practices, your classes can be more effective, and that should result in your students and your customers being very satisfied once they pay for the course and take it. And that's what's important, because that's what's going to keep them coming back again. That's what's going to cause them to give you a high rating and talk about how great your courses are, which will help accelerate your sales. Well, I think you can see the value and the practicality of applying that roadmap that we just went over, of how you can apply these best practices of instructional and experiential design. So I challenge you to do that. Now, in the next video, you will learn all of the core competencies that I've identified based on my 25 plus years of experience in actually being responsible for designing and implementing training programs in a business environment. Also, I would ask you, if you found value in this information, to please like us on our YouTube page and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Also, visit our website. There's a link below. Please follow that link and subscribe there. We'll give you some more free information. You can join our community, which is we're building now. There's a lot more learning opportunities there, both free and it includes some certification training that you can get. So please join us there. Thank you very much.